Okay, today is Monday, November 16th, 2020. This is the Kubernetes CSI implementation meeting. Let's just go down. So 120 code freeze was last Thursday. Let's go down actually our normal release statuses starting with 119. I think we mostly just have some docs changes here that are left. I guess, Xing, do you have an update on the health monitor docs?
Yeah, I think I updated all of those. If you can take a look.
Okay, sounds good. And same for the snapshot docs?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go ahead and take a look at those. The other last remaining issue is the build process, the release process for CSI proxy is broken due to expired credentials. I need to ping Jing again to see where we are on this. Next, let's move on to 120 and let's see what we've been able to do. First up, Chang has a PR out that fixes a bug in leader election. Well, it doesn't fix a bug in leader election. It works around a bug in leader election by adding a health endpoint that will return unhealthy if the leader has not been able to renew its lease. So that changes out and under review. Next, Patrick has the deployment without central controller. I think that's mostly waiting on me to review. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. So basically
Okay.
at this point, I'm waiting for feedback on the concept, and I want to do the scale testing with that current prototype. And I do have news on that, but we can talk about that later.
Okay, sounds good. All right, next up is switching to Klog v2. I think, let's see, I think we're waiting on just the leader election fix for the CSI libutils. I think that's the last thing remaining before we can cut a release. And other than that, there's also just a bunch of changes in general in all of the repos that we'll need to start on. I'll go ahead, I think now that code freeze is out, I can go ahead and start working on at least the repos I signed up for. All right. Next up, making pod info amount mutable. This is a change in Kubernetes core and it's past code freeze, so I think this is something we will have to defer to 121. Next up is this performance testing. I think this is in the same boat. I think this will be deferred to 121. Same thing with this one. Let's see, this one, I know, Christian, you had a PR out. Did that merge for
No.
code freeze?
It's not merged
Okay.
yet. So the feedback that Hemant applied has been implemented, but Hemant also wanted us to get a unit test in, and I haven't been able to unit test it yet.
Okay. I guess since this is sort of a bug fix, we can actually still target this for 120. I think that's fine. Let me just add the new link here.
Yeah, so the main thing was that there was like on the map path also we were using remove all, so just we should get rid of all, remove all, and then unit testing. This might be tricky, as I mentioned in the review. So if we can do it, that'll be awesome. If we cannot, then we'll have to kind of we can maybe merge it, but we have to test it.
Okay, sounds good to me. I think I'm still going to target it for 120 since it's a bug fix. So I think that'll be good to have. Let's see, cleaning up volume directories, or not checking for mounts in cleanup orphan pod directories, instead check for directories. This has merged, so this should help clear up some of the flaky mock driver tests. I think they might now I think the mock driver tests might be hitting the other race about unstage and delete, but I think at least this one, it will no longer prevent the, well, okay, there might still be an issue. We'll see. The other change about not checking for mount directories in CSI node stage and publish, that has also merged. It broke some of our test drivers and a real driver, but I think last time we decided we're still gonna go ahead with the change since we already announced the deprecation of this behavior in 118. Jan had sent out a notice to SIG storage and CSI mailing lists to tell drivers to double check their behaviors. So I think unless we really hear back from any driver vendors, I think we can still go ahead with this. So I'll mark that as done. All right. Next up is FS group.
My changes did get merged Thursday afternoon, and the docs have already been updated. So this should be good to go for 120 as far as my
Okay.
pieces.
Awesome. Let's see. Metrics have merged. I think these two are done too. Relax validation, and this is done. Do we need to update the CSI docs at all?
That might be a good thing to do actually, because now there's a,
Okay, let's add a note here.
Yeah, there's a CSI driver object. We can update the documentation of that one. Just link into the, like, whatever note you add, where to
All right.
update it.
Sounds good. Awesome. Did we have any follow-up items from here, from any of the work? There was a follow-up item on the metrics, right?
I think that peer also merged. Oh, the unit test. Yeah, the unit test.
Was there anything that we could follow up on the E2E tests? Like, do we need to test the pod change policy with the CSI driver?
Policy. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had to. I was asking Christian, like, if we can move the CSI driver.fs policy change, whatever that field is called, into the test suits so that other drivers that use something similar can be tested. Maybe that's a goal.
Well, I think from a CSI driver standpoint, they're not going to like support multiple values, right? CSI drivers are only going to support one value.
That's true, but at the same time, like, actually the mock driver sufficiently covers it, but we could test with host path driver or something else, like if the none and the file types.
Yeah. I mean, we can probably like, it might just be we enhance the mock test more to add more test combinations, maybe. Anyway, we can we can discuss and see what might be best.
So just before we move on, there's an item here I have added emit metric for number of pods that use different Linux context on same volume. So this is very particular metric, and me and Jan were discussing the other day if it is okay for us to emit that metric, where same volume is being used by two pods with potentially different SLNS contexts, and we thought of if we can do it externally and everything. But at the end of the day, the kubelet is the right component where we can potentially emit this metric and get an idea of how many kind of things, like how many workloads we could possibly be breaking if we go ahead with the subpath SLNX thing that we talked about.
Is this something that you can get just by querying like all the pods?
No, not always, because like if the not always, because if the some paths may have SLNS context missing, so in that case the CRI will apply SLNS context.
Oh, it will apply some random one or
yeah, it will generate one.
interesting. Okay.
And yeah, I mean there was some there were some other downsides of if we can get a inaccurate matrix, but maybe rough matrix, but if we want to do it proper, then we should do this in kubelet. But at the same time, this is very specific thing, so
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine if we really need this to count.
yeah. So Clayton and Oliver, like before we break people, we should try to get an idea of how many people will be breaking, and the way we are planning to measure it is like clusters that use SLNX, see if there is significant number of users that are affected, and then go ahead.
Yeah, although that will still take some time to collect the information, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So that means that like the SC Linux stuff is still going to be delayed for quite a while.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you could introduce it as alpha
As
first.
alpha feature, yeah. And then gather metric and then make the permanent change.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Did we have any other follow-ups for the FS group work?
No, I think not. Just
No.
we have to do the SLN stuff in the next quarter.
Oh, what about the mount mode?
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah. We ran out of time on the CSI call last whenever it was.
Because this might be blocking the Azure
Yeah.
migration, is that right?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit hesitant to put GID as a general purpose workaround for all the plugins to use and skip recursive permission change that happens in kubelet, because then we are opening the whole can of worms of passing like policy and everything else. I mean, but anyway, we can have that discussion later. Sorry. No.
All right, sounds good. Awesome. Thanks for the
Before we
update.
change off this,
Oh,
just
yeah?
one note, I did submit a PR to the CSI docs to update, excuse me, to update the CSI driver FS group policy going to beta. I don't know what else needs to be
Awesome.
updated.
No, I think that's it. I think that's it. Cool. Thank you very much. Next is snapshots.
Yeah, so the entry PR got merged and the docs PR is also merged. We still have a few things. Basically, the release tools, I think. So I think I need to make another change so that whenever we are running the CI in external snapshot repo, then everything should be install from there, like CRDs, controller, and RBAC.
Mm-hmm.
So right now it's not. So even after I got the latest change, which used the new CRDs, but then when we are running like 17 on 17 or 18 on 18, those are not really using the new CRDs, using the older one. So then the test still won't pass. So I need to make that change first before anything can pass on the external snapshotter.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that sounds good. Do you need help in making that change, or do you know what to do?
If someone can help, that'll be great. I was just looking at it, but if someone who do you have anyone in mind who might be able to help that?
I'm not sure. But I think basically like we need to look at the place where the prow.sh is substituting the images for the sidecars. And then I think we just need to take that logic and kind of do the same thing for the controller and CRD part.
I think the image is already, because I see in the logs and there's actually a snapshot controller tagged with the CSI Pro. I just want to see how to load it right now. I was just trying to figure that out because it looks like I was trying to load it, it's not there, but I see that in some of the messages you printed out.
So the logic's already there to build it, but I guess we need the logic to actually install it.
Maybe need to, maybe we need to, so Patrick probably, so we need to do this kind load thing. I see there's some code there trying to do like a kind load image.
Yeah, that's right. That's one of the issues with kind cluster. It doesn't have access to the registry or actually there is no registry at the point when we build images. So we build images, they exist on the build host, but they are not pushed to any registry.
Okay.
Therefore, you have to do kind site, or I think it's called site loading.
I see there's something like that's for the sidecar. I see that we're doing that already. So like kind load.
It's all there for the other images.
Okay.
And there's also some logic in Browse Asia. I added a comment to that discussion that we were having, where it's currently deciding which images to replace for the CSI driver deployment. And you basically just need to add the same special handling for kind cluster with side loading, and then parameterize the cluster setup script such that it can use the overridden variable for the CRD and the controller image.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just right now trying to do some simple tests just to see if that works or not. But I think I didn't do a kind load, so it's not finding. I was thinking it's actually a local image, but it's actually not. So
it is a local image on the build host.
Okay,
but
not the kind cluster.
Right? The kind cluster has its own separate Docker instance.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at that script and see. Yeah, trying to do that.
All right. Yeah. Sounds good. Thank you. Anything else?
So I think Grant is working on the metrics. Yeah, I think he updated PR, addressed the comments. I think Shan-Chen is reviewing it, right? Grant, are there anything else? Any other?
Yeah, those are both ready for review, the E2E test and the Snapshotter. So I think Shan-Chen's looking at it right now.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
All right. Awesome. And there's a few other changes that we need to make in the controller. Is that right?
Yeah. So I think I think Shan-Chen signed up for that one driver name. I will ping him. And then the other one, that's reload. So I'm looking for someone to work on that reload search. So we talked about that, so we know what needs to be done. Just need to find someone to work on that.
Yeah. Use driver name also seems like a fairly straightforward fix.
Yeah, that seems to be pretty straightforward. Yeah. So I need to ping him because he signed up for that one. I just want to ping him and see when he can work on that. And then let's see. Oh, the secrets. I think Mona has working on making that change to do that secrets testing in the mock driver. So I think I need to see his PR. Because last time I reviewed, it looks like he's not moving it over there. So give you comments, and maybe it's right now it's moved to the mock driver. Validation webhook, yeah, that one we still don't have anyone assigned yet, so we need to look for someone for that test. But we talked about that one, maybe not really a J blocker, the E2E test for validation, but we're trying to find someone for that one as well. See what else. And then there was a couple of other PRs that are being reviewed. There was like trying to change it to use patch instead of update. I think Karthik is working on that, still being reviewed.
All right, sounds good. Let us know if you need help finding people to make some of these changes.
Yeah, I think the validation. So the E2E test, that one, I think probably needs someone if you can find someone. Because right now we don't have anyone yet. The third change, I'm going to check with someone in my team and see if we has time. Otherwise, maybe we'll try to find someone as well. So I'll ping you and see
Okay.
how that one goes, because that one has a higher priority. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. All right, let's see. Next up, we have data populators.
Hey, we are at the point of doing implementation, and I think we're going to cancel the meeting this weekend, next week, and just work on implementation. So it's
Awesome.
not, we're looking at 121 at this point for having it be done.
Sounds good. Do we have like a example use case in mind for some data to populate?
Well, yeah, the KEP covers 2 specific use cases, and I have asked people to suggest more like actual use cases that would help people understand why we have the feature. But the 2 use cases the KEP calls out are the populating a VM image if you're doing VMs on top of Kubernetes, and also restoring a backup if you're doing a backup use case. Those are my 2 favorite use cases, but you can imagine some others.
Okay. Cool. Sounds good. That'll be fun. Next, we have volume expansion. Hamad, are you there? All right, we'll come back to this when Hamad is back. Next, we have volume health.
Yeah, so I think we're still working on adding that in the host path driver. I think there was I think he initially trying to get that from trying to communicate with the Kube API server, which I don't think we should do, which is because we're in the driver, so we shouldn't be doing that. So he modified that. I think there are still a few things that we need to sort out. And then for the E2E test, so we probably can't use the mock driver for now, because I think the approach basically it's like always returns so it basically allow you to change the gRPC code to error code, but with like an empty response. In our case, we actually need to have something in the response, so we can't really use that.
I wonder if the mock driver can be enhanced so that you can modify the response as well.
I have a long-standing, or not long-standing idea, but my idea at some point was to make the mock driver just a proxy for some stub code that actually runs in the E2E test binary. And then in the E2E test, you would have full control over the entire response from the mock driver that runs inside the cluster. I've not experimented with it a year further. I think we discussed it at some time as an alternative to the existing JavaScript-based error injection code. The concern is, or was, and probably still is, that not all clusters allow establishing a connection to the CSI mock driver. So that might be a little bit tricky to set up. On the other hand, I'm not sure whether we needed to work for all clusters, because CSI mock driver test is mostly just Kubernetes CSI, Kubernetes testing itself. It's not necessarily even compliance testing. So perhaps that approach actually is viable.
I think definitely going forward, we're going to add mock driver to the conformance tests. So
Okay.
I think, yeah, this might be a concern because usually a lot of places don't allow like components inside the cluster to go create connections to things outside of the cluster. It's really only a one-way communication there.
So, but communication from outside the cluster into the cluster, that is supposed to be possible.
Yes.
And not, okay, so a service exposed by the mock driver that somehow gets connected to, that would be acceptable.
Yes, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I see what you mean, because the setting up the IP routing, even that may be a little bit tricky, but at least it would be more or less standard Kubernetes practice that you run something like that in a cluster.
I think the thing is, right now, clusters like our E2E tests typically just connect. They connect to only the API server, right? They don't connect to services inside the cluster because you would need an external load balancer and things like that to make it publicly available.
Yeah. Is compliance nowadays meant to be run from outside the cluster or inside the cluster? Because things like Boyo, now what's it called? The thing that packages E2E and runs it, I think it's Boyo or something, that runs inside the cluster. And I think I was surprised, at least at some point, that this was advocated as the official way to run the E2E tests instead of ensuring that they run outside of a cluster.
I'm not sure. We need to double check with the conformance group on this, but I don't think running inside the cluster, running the E2E client inside the cluster is a requirement.
Okay. Yeah, it's Sonoboy. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Sonoboy, whatever. That is the tool that I was thinking of.
Mm-hmm. I guess going back to the current JavaScript approach, I forgot who added that. Was that Tomas or Fabio? Do you know?
Yes, it was Tomas.
Okay. Like if maybe we should double check with Tomas if he thinks it's possible to extend that to also be able to modify the return value and not just the return code.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we discussed that a little bit, and I think he wasn't too optimistic about it when it was added, because I already asked at that time. It basically would imply that you need to do some kind of CSI binding for JavaScript, for the JavaScript to have access to all of the fields in a response.
It can't just do like some JSON or something. I guess it's RPC.
Perhaps JSON might work, but then it's not very convenient in the JavaScript API. In your test code where you generate the JavaScript response, you manually need to construct the JSON content.
Yeah, which is what we do for the snapshot tests today.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we have a couple options. I think maybe Shing, we should sync up with Tomas again and see if we can find some sort of solution there.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Anything else with volume health?
That's it.
All right, cool. All right, I guess next, I think Patrick, you have a couple of items for some of the features.
I think it's mostly just one at this point. So I did attend, well, yeah, the first one we already discussed. I'm waiting for, yeah, that's another pending PR where I would like to get your opinion. I think it's actually in an emergeable state. It just needs to be reviewed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Okay.
the PR that needs attention. We were discussing doing some scalability testing with volume provisioning. And I attended the SIG Scalability meeting last week on Thursday, and they are interested. They will grant us access to some larger cluster running inside Google or on Google infrastructure. I probably won't get direct access, that's just not possible, but I can provide some script that runs the experiment and then get some results back. My thinking is that I'll take the cluster load 2 tool and the existing or the extended provisioning test that I've been working with, and then measure under various circumstances or various configurations. The question I have is what results we want to get out of that experiment. So I think it gives us some valuable information on multiple fronts. We do have a long-standing open issue about our example deployments in the CSI driver host path where we don't specify the resource requirements. And I think that's mostly because we don't know what the resource requirements actually are. And I was thinking that if I run this experiment, I might as well run the metric server and the vertical pod autoscaler, because that seems to be the recommended approach of getting some numbers out of a real cluster under some workload. And if I get that for this experiment, it should be good enough also for lower load situations. So that would be my first result that I hope to get. And then the cluster 2 load tool can give us API server load and overall test runtime. The input parameters for the experiments would be numbers of persistent volume claims per second, when we can start with something low, make it higher, increase the total number of volumes that are created by each test. Yeah, and we can scale up the number of nodes, but that's a bit more limited. Initially, the cluster will be a few hundred nodes to get started on and see whether the test runs. But we can also shoot for something higher, like 5,000 nodes eventually.
All right.
Yeah, just the last point, we already identified that currently the kube controller is limiting. Is the limiting factor if you have a fast CSI driver. So I would run all of these experiments with a kube controller manager that is configured to allow a high number of requests per second. Because otherwise we'll just never get any high API server load, for example.
Mm-hmm.
There would be an initial burst a burst for creating volumes, and then the kube controller manager would slowly churn through those pending PVCs. That's what I've been seeing with the default configuration. I don't think that's particularly interesting. So I would just reconfigure kube controller to immediately do as much work as it can and see where that gets us.
Yeah. I think it'll be good to see, like, if we increase the QPS for kube controller manager, what impact does that have on the API server?
Yeah.
And I think that'll be something good to measure.
I'm not sure how relevant that will be going forward, because I also asked about that, and SIG Scalability pointed towards the ongoing work of replacing client-side request rate limiting with API server priority prioritization of requests. So the goal is to let clients trigger as many requests as they want, and the API server will ensure that the important ones don't get starved. And that's actually the goal for Kube Controller Manager going forward. The request limit will be just removed, and the API server will ensure that the cluster survives, even if some controller runs amok and does too many requests.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
yeah, that sounds good too.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know the status of that feature and how long it's gonna take to roll out, but
I think it's beta in 120.
okay.
It just got in with an exception.
Okay, yeah, then that sounds promising. It sounds like it can maybe line up with our timelines then. So yeah, that sounds good. Awesome.
Yeah.
This sounds really good.
Is there anything else that we want to measure? I think it would, personally, I would love the latency per volume, but I don't think we can currently measure that. We're not with the existing test.
Mm-hmm. Did we want to also measure, I think you were looking at two different approaches to for
Yes.
immediate binding.
Yes. That will be part of that experiment. It's just a different configuration with a different driver deployment. So this would run for two different deployment scenarios. One would be the normal central external provisioner that somehow communicates, or lets the driver figure out how to deploy different volumes. And the other would be the experimental distributed provisioning with external provisioner running on each node. So yeah, I would compare both, and the goal would be to figure out whether that distributed approach scales equally well, or at least does scale to some extent, or how far it scales. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good to me. And then one more question, just in terms of long-term plan, do you think it would be valuable to be able to regularly run these scale tests just in like a periodic job using mock driver?
I think it would be useful. For me, for example, it was surprising to see how slow the volume provisioning rate currently is in Kubernetes. I'm not sure whether people have noticed or just haven't cared. I really don't know, but it would be nice.
I think people haven't really cared. I don't know if people are actually provisioning volumes quite so high right now, realistically.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it would be interesting to see whether there is a requirement for Kubernetes that we should check on regularly, or whether we just do it for our own understanding of where we are.
Yeah.
And
like I think having a periodic would be nice so that we can maybe catch regressions in the future. Like if we make a change in the sidecar that causes a scale regression.
Yeah, I think that would be useful. And I think SIG Scalability is interested in adding something more long term. We just need to figure out what exactly that is. Whether it's, I think they mentioned stateful set, because that's already in Kubernetes and has been there for a while. But there are other things that we are now working on that are affected by scalability. The distributed provisioning, storage capacity is another thing that needs a completely different experiment, but I want to get back to that also after being done with the provisioning part. So yeah, there will be more things and more discussions with SIG Scalability.
Okay, sounds good. Like I might have someone from my team that may be able to help at least develop any periodic scale tests that we want to add. So I need to double check, but I can have him work with you to design or to, I guess, scope out the tests that we want to add.
Okay. out of curiosity, have you used any kind of tool, or what have you? How have you looked at those results in the past?
So I think in general, like the cluster loader 2 outputs a bunch of metrics and results. So I believe SIG Scalability does have dashboards and other tooling to consume those results.
Okay. Yeah, it'll always be possible to just import it into GNU or do some other kind of graphing, but I was wondering whether there have been people or tools that have been used in the past, but I'll figure out something. Thanks.
All right, awesome. Thanks for the update. Are there any other topics anyone wants to discuss? All right, then we'll end for today. Thanks.